What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here. Delarose.com. That's DELARROZ.com. If you love classic comic books, definitely go to my Indiegogo in the description below. Grab my new book, Deus Vult. If you like John Buscema, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, those types of stories, if you like Conan the Barbarian, all the old school pulp stuff, you're going to love that book, and I think you should go back that. Support the channel, enjoy good content. Thank you, everybody who has read so far. This has been my best crowdfund by far so far, so you guys have been really supportive, and I appreciate it. Go check that out. It's in the description below. All right, this is the Eternals Omnibus. Now, there was originally an Eternals Omnibus, and it just covered Jack Kirby's work from his original series. This one there's a bunch of stories from What If, and then there's a bunch of stories from a Eternals miniseries, and then there's 2 graphic novels that were done in the 80s and 90s after that. So it really made for a thick tome, and it took me a while to read this because of that. If you haven't seen some reviews and you see me skipping a few days of reviews, it's because these omnibuses take a lot longer than short trade paperbacks or anything like that. So I do that. I got the cover that had the classic Jack Kirby art on it. There's 2 different covers to it. I just prefer this art, so that's me. The inside doesn't really have all that much. Sometimes they have these beautiful covers on there, but it's just... oh, I've got it upside down. Whoops. I always put these dust jackets on upside down for these videos. Here we go. Here's the front of it. So it's a pretty clean and classic style omnibus compared to a lot of the newer ones. But got the black paper on the inside, and here we are. Jack Kirby's Eternals. He starts out with 3 concepts really. There's 3 different races compared to and the humans, of course, but these Celestials, these space gods, basically, which are signified here, and they show up pretty shortly here. Look at this beautiful Jack Kirby art. Oh my gosh. The Celestials seeded the galaxy, basically, and this is based on some 1960s alien theory, which I forget the name of the book, but it was actually a book that Kirby was reading, and he thought it was interesting, and so he decided to put it in the comic. And the Celestials seeded the life. They seeded humans. They seeded deviants, which were like, they're kind of mutated in a negative way, but they're, as you can see from their pink and look at that weird pickly head. And then there's the Eternals, who are like just superhero gods, and a lot of them are classic. Like there's Icarus, like who's from classic Greek mythology. Athena, from classic Greek mythology. So these Eternals really are eternal, and Cersei's another one. She became an Avenger later, but yeah, that's that. So what happens is the Celestials show up, and we learn about the first issue really is the origin here, and we get little 2001: A Space Odyssey. Kirby also did that book with the there's no monolith in here though. That does happen in the Machine Man series, which is an aside. But again, we just get the cool Kirby designs here. Look at this beautiful splash page right here, and then of course the double splash page, then double splash pages. This is very classic 70s Kirby alien spaceship, and they're very scared of what's happening. These Margot and her professor father are looking into this like ancient pyramid and trying to make these discoveries while this is all happening, and then they come across this wild extra world that's happening. And look at that. This is a cool design. Oh my gosh, the art's so good. And I'm very happy at this point. So we get a couple essays from Kirby for the first issue before they go into letters, and you get to read all those, which is nice about the omnibus. And then it starts to settle in where the Eternals are here. We don't know what's going on. We meet Cersei finally, who's like, all she wants to do is party, and she uses her powers to like create parties. The Deviants start to attack everything, and the Eternals fight the Deviants. The Deviants are very mad at humanity and the Eternals because they don't like their station in life, basically, and they want to destroy everything. Ha 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 ha. So we get some cool plots in here. We get a lot of cool characters set up in the beginning of this arc. And we still get some fights in here. We've got Athena ends up going to the Deviants realm and rescues these Deviants who are actually good Deviants at some point and brings them back. We get some weird action with these celestial space gods who are very cool designs also. The art's really nice, and I was really thrilled with this for the first several issues. And unfortunately, it just kind of stalls out. what happens through this is, I don't know, you start to see in the letters columns that people start complaining that this really doesn't fit within the Marvel Universe. And they keep teasing that it kind of is in the Marvel Universe. These are the deviants she rescued. This is one of the good ones. And this is one who looks like a human who gets rescued. I like Thena. I would love to write a Thena book. Anyway. And the deviants have problems with the space gods. The humans have problems with the space gods too. There's one point where the Russians actually attack the space gods and get all blown up. There's Thena again. Really cool design on Thena. She's just a beautiful character. Like I said, here's the Russians. Yeah. Like I said, it eventually just stalls out, and nothing really develops with the deviants. You don't really figure out why they're fighting things. This one changes, like, the Unimind. So all the Eternals, I guess, they establish in this issue that they have these meetings where they form this, like, giant brain in the sky telepathically, and they become one together. And here's the Unimind. Very, very bizarre, cool concept. The conceptual parts are just, like, off the charts cool. But the stories really just, like I said, stall out around this point in the Omnibus. And they end up fighting, like, this Hulk to kind of show they're in the Marvel Universe. But then Kirby really didn't want to do it, you could tell, because he ends up making the Hulk a fake robot Hulk instead of an actual Hulk. So even though they fight the Hulk, he's not actually there. So he really didn't tie it into the Marvel Universe as much as, like, they teased that was going to happen. I'm going to guess sales just didn't do well at this point, and so they just kind of dropped it off. And there's, like, 3 more issues left. And eventually the deviants try to kill the space gods, the Celestials, and they get stopped. And that's that. And then it just ends. So there's no... The space gods, like, have this background where I guess they're going to judge Earth whether it's worthy or not. And it's just sadly ends there. Like I said, the art makes it worthwhile. I mean, you read this, you're happy because you got all the Kirby stuff. Just really cool. The last, like, 4 or 5 issues really don't add to the story very much. And then there's not much going on. You get a nice essay by Peter Gillis, who then takes over a lot of the stuff here. Now, there's a background in What Ifs, and What Ifs just goes into the history of the Celestials and the Deviants and all that. And they're just short stories here. Mark Grunwald did some of these. And Mark Grunwald really sets up a lot of Marvel history. He wrote several essays about, not in this book, but about just, like, setting up continuity and things like that. So he's really the continuity guru out of everybody in Marvel. Ralph Macchio, who does a lot of Avengers work later, and is a editor who's well known, does this. And this is just Marvel House style art, and they're all background stories about, like, 10,000 years ago. The Unimind did this. And it turns out, like, several Eternals went to Uranus, and then there's these Titans out there, and they end up settling a world out there, and we learn about them. They end up part of the cosmic saga with Thanos a little bit later on. You get a Inhumans crossover here. Again, these are just background stories. They just they're written just like exposition as the backups for What If. And so you learn how they existed throughout time. So that's pretty fun. Then you get into Iron Man, and you get a story by Peter Gillis with Luke McDaniel on pencils. Very odd shape here. He's, yeah, not the best figure. What can you do? And this is Rhodey inside the Iron Man suit. It's not Tony Stark in this one. But he stumbles upon this deviant plan where he's captured all the Eternals, and then Iron Man ends up rescuing them. So it's a very simple plot, but it was also very fun. Again, I don't love the art on this one, but at least the plot was fun. We saw the deviants and how they were going to kill all the Eternals and steal all their powers, and then suddenly Iron Man saves the day along with Thena, who then comes out of this. And then you get an Avengers trilogy for 3 issues, where the Avengers actually deal with the Eternals. You get Roger Stern writing and Al Milgrom pencils. Again, this is just simple Marvel House style. And we get to deal with Cersei. We get some background Captain Marvel, who's Monica Rambeau at that point. And the Avengers interface with the Eternals, and the Eternals go into their Unimind, Turns out some deviants are getting involved, of course, as always. And it's just a fun story. Again, this Iron Man, these backups were really good. Now, you're probably wondering, what the heck happened with the Celestials? They were all on the Earth. And I'm like, yes, I'm wondering that too. But what happened is there was this like storyline in Thor around Thor 300, which dealt with them. It didn't show up in here because I guess this is just Eternals focused. I guess it's not dealing with the Celestials. I would have really liked to have had that in there. But really, to get the maximum impact of that, before you get into sort of this stuff, after the Kirby stuff, you should probably read that Celestial Saga, which is in a Thor thick trade paperback right now. I'm waiting for the Epic collections for that, but that does exist in the trade paperback form. Okay, Peter Gillis keeps writing at this point, so he did a pretty good job on the Iron Man. I enjoyed that. He did a really Roger Stern always is good on Avengers, so that's where that is. We did a 12-issue series about the Eternals now. And the Eternals have like some sort of internal strife. Actually, this is Sal Buscema on art. I actually kind of like his art a little bit. Like Kirby does the designs, but for just reading a comic book, Sal Buscema is one of my favorite people to read. I think he just really dials in that beautiful look of Marvel Comics and the fun of Marvel Comics. Athena becomes queen of the Eternals, and everybody's kind of worried about her loyalties here. And the deviants are starting to show up in weird places, and wrestling matches. So Icarus is after them, and Athena doesn't want to help. She's just like, why do we care if they're like doing wrestling matches? And her loyalties start to get questioned through this. So it turns out there's these deviant plots building up in the background. This guy named Crow, who we've seen in the past, has taken over the sort of throne from Toad, who was their old guy who was in charge, and he's fighting with these like mystic priests right here, as you can see. Really cool. Look at this guy. He's awesome looking. And the mystic priests are up to something even more dubious than before. Now, very cool. This sets this up. There's this nice storyline with this guy who's going to commit suicide, and Cersei saves him and shows him there's something to live for throughout all this. So that was a nice plot line. And the deviants are about to strike. They've found this old stuff going on, and they want to grab this vial to sort of change their whole dynamic. And the Eternals must stop them from doing bad things with that. And it goes back and forth for a while. This, again, stalls out. So it's a really nice setup again. And I love Sal Buscema's art through all this. But it really just, like, it drags as it gets through here. Now, there's a storyline where Athena is really betraying the Eternals because she's in love with Crow, who's the leader of the Deviants. But everybody thinks that Crow is really in charge of all this stuff causing problems. He's really not so much. And it ends up being those priest people, which they find out later. But Crow and Athena disappear, and this is where it really slows down. There's a whole issue of just like Deviants chasing Athena and Crow. Again, I like the character Athena quite a bit. But you meet this cool deviant artist too, who like is nicer than the rest. There's this weird background stuff where they're like killing deviants, they're like sacrificing them into a fire, but they really don't. They like store them in pods instead. And so we find out about that, and I guess the priests are going to resurrect them all at some point and have them overrun the world. Ha 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 ha. But why did they need to store them in pods to do that? I don't understand. Meanwhile, Cersei's partying. And again, it just slows down. So it's like we're waiting for this epic climax to build. You probably should have shortened this by like 3 or 4 issues. And then Peter Gillis gets fired and Walter Simonson takes over writing. And it picks back up again. So as it started to drag, I get interested in the story again. Walt Simonson really starts busting this story out. We get some Kirby-esque machines in here that the Deviants are working with. And here we go. And now Sal Buscema's off the book, and I don't know why that is, but Keith Pollard takes over. He's all right. I just like Sal Buscema's style a little bit better. He has a little more distinct of a style. Keith Pollard just kind of has that house style of Marvel. Eventually, through this issue, the priest guy, gets leveled up. Make my monster grow, and he like tries to become a Celestial basically, and he thinks he gains the power, and here we go. The Eternals and the Avengers. Yes, the Avengers show up in the last issue, just they just show up. Work to stop him, and that's that. So that's that. So it was an okay storyline. It kind of didn't build the way I wanted it to. The middle really dragged, but it was all right. At least it finished up, and at least it solved what was going on, unlike Kirby's, which just kind of ended. Which is sad about that. I wish that would have continued a little bit. But then we get a graphic novel here, and this is, I guess, from 1991. This is prior to their change from house style. And this is really good. This is done by Roy and Dan Thomas with Mark Teixeira. There's early Mark Teixeira in here. You see how Athena gets quite sexualized compared to before this. We're now in the 90s. She's now in this like really tight bodysuit, which has like you can see her belly button for some reason, right? But I can't lie, it's nice to look at. But of course, the Deviants are back, and this is a beautiful storyline. This is the best story of the book, hands down. We have. It turns out Athena has like these children who are twins, and they're kind of like new deviant or new Eternals, and nobody knew that they could actually get pregnant and do that, and so the Deviants kidnap them. It turns out. And there's kind of a weird one here. Oh, I should have mentioned it in the last Maxi series. A lot of people die in that one. That guy who like was and it matters to the story, so I kind of have to spoil it. The guy who was a suicide attempt, he gets killed defending the Eternals, and then Margot from the original series dies. And so there's a twist here that actually her father, the professor, was leading these like new monsters to kidnap the kids to try to get revenge on the Eternals, who he blames for the death. And I kind of felt weird about that because Jack Kirby didn't set up that guy as a villain at all. He was very much a good guy. So I kind of don't like the twist in that to change things, but I get how it works with the plot line because he's mad. You know, he goes crazy because his daughter dies. And they save the kids, who then we don't see again. So... And then we get some weird Apocalypse Now from the middle of the 90s. This is after Marvel kind of went down the tank in the 90s. And you can see the art is just like look at that like perspective shot. It is, that's anatomy problems right there. It looks bad. So this is eminently skippable at the end of it. You could have ended it the last one, but there's like Apocalypse in a moon, and there's these deviants fighting Eternals again. And man, this was hard to get through. This was just terrible. At the end of it, they start a new Eternals thing. They call it the New Breed, and you see these new Eternals who look like they're wannabe Rob Liefeld creations, but just not with the flair of Rob Liefeld. And that's the end. And that's that. You get a cool history handbook of the Marvel Universe at the end, where they go through each and every character from that period in time there. So you get to learn who all of them are and their backstories if you're interested in that. And those are some cool extras. I like that. This is cool. But yeah, ends on a down note. This is a mixed bag again. I really like the concept of Kirby, and I loved reading all the Kirby art just because I love Kirby. The Maxi series for 12 issues was started off strong, really had a problem towards the middle, and ended okay. That one Roy Thomas one shot was excellent, and the last one was completely unreadable. So, oh yeah, and the history with the what ifs was pretty good. So overall, it was an 8 out of 10. I definitely recommend this Omnibus. There's enough good content in here to outweigh the bad. It is now I know everything about the Eternals. I'm ready for the movie or whatnot. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.